Good evening and welcome back to the channel. The Weirdly Wonderful with Strange Bones, that's me. And welcome to everybody that is here. So, where are we today? So we've started off, of course, with looking at the specific areas of South Africa and then Saudi Arabia and then on to Portugal. And we are jumping around the world a fair bit. And we're going to keep doing that because, after all, why shouldn't we? But just to start up, somebody was asking me the other day when they heard about the channel that I've got going here on TikTok, why is it that I'm actually doing this at all? What is the point of all of this? And I think the answer to that is to be found in several different things. Hey there, Bernice. Hey there, Alexander. Hey there, Fani. It's awesome to see you guys here. Hey there, Jolene. I think the main reason for all of this is along the lines that I think we all feel somehow in our, I don't know, shall we say in our bones, that there's more to the world than we initially see. There's a lot more going on in the world than just mere science tells us. And of course, I'm one of those people that I can't stand a mystery. I have to find out. And this is perhaps the ultimate mystery, isn't it? Is there something more out there? And can we find out more? But I think it's also in many ways a look in ourselves, that what is it in us that drives us to try to understand things that are apparently beyond us. Hey there, Aura. Hey there, Moketsi. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think it would be fair to say that the point of searching the supernatural is to answer that fundamental question of what is out there, and of course, far more importantly, does it matter? And not so much does it matter to everybody else as does it matter to me, myself? Would it change my life if there is more? So I think there are many sides to the urge to find out more. And along with that, of course, is if we say we are looking to find out more, what is the more that is out there? I think it's absolutely true that a lot of the mythologies and stories are just that, just stories, ways to try to explain things. Hey, Solly, I think that many of the things that we do tell stories about are lessons, perhaps, to teach us more about things we should be careful about or things that we should avoid. But I don't think that's the whole story. Hey, Andy. I think there's more out there. So as we go around the world and we start looking at things, I think we're looking at, are there commonalities? Are there things that people have tried to explain around the world that echo things we ourselves have tried to explain, not only ourselves personally, but in our cultures, that maybe hint at things that might be true? And having said that, should we worry about them? Well, today's live is going to go to Wales, which, of course, is a very, very old country, part of the British Isles, but an independent kingdom, and absolutely a fascinating place with a fascinating people that goes back many, many centuries. And when it comes to the ghosts of the place, they have no lack whatsoever. There's more than a few that we can look at, and plenty of places that are said to be haunted. Um, so I think that we will find our sadly brief visit there um, to be quite rich. As we know, it is a very damp place and very lush and green in its isles, and it's one of the last of the Gaelic cultures. Um, if you know anything at all about the Gaelic peoples, there are a few. You have the Scots Gaelic, of course, you have the Irish Gaelic, and you have the Welsh Gaelic. And we've got a good question that's come in here. Do you believe that there's supernatural events or witchcraft? I'm going to have to say that that's part of what this live is about, to talk about and find out about that. But I'm inclined to the yes, Muketsi. I really am. I have seen things which I am fairly convinced are ghosts at the very least, and a few things otherwise, which, as we progress through, we will discuss. So let's start up and let's see what Wales has got to offer. Um, one of the places that you are actually allowed to stay over in, if you are interested in such strange and twisted things, um, is a castle. And again, many of these words, as with in our other lives, they are very difficult for me to pronounce. So if I don't get the pronunciation correct, I do apologize. But Craiginos, which is a castle in Wales, and it is an estate that has been there for quite a long time, and in the 19th century um, was the home of an opera singer, Adelina Patti, who in her day was one of the most famous opera singer women in the world. Now, they say that if you do stay over, you had better have very, very strong nerves, because it's absolutely one of the most haunted places in Wales. And it is a regular, apparently, with paranormal investigators, and there's been a whole ton of tests and more, hey Caris, um, who've done their best to find out more about the place. But they say that there is no lack of ghosts in there. Quite a few uh, strange things, including, as we have discovered in past lives. Hey, Ethan. Um, Again, more of our shadow people, which seem to be a commonality no matter where in the world you go, or what the culture is, or what the religion is. They seem to turn up. There have been a number of videos by different um, paranormal investigators about the place, and they say that you're almost guaranteed to see something if you stay over there. Another one which is well worth a look is in Denbighshire, uh, and it's called Ruthin Jail, which was used to hold the worst criminals in the country, many of whom were very badly mistreated by guards, and a number of which lasted not too long and ended their days in the jail. Um, it has a whole lot of different ghosts in there, many of which, of course, fit the profile, hey, Telese, um, of being angry and violent, and in some cases quite insane. So, fertile ground for ghosts. They say that doors slam, presences are felt, voices mutter in the dark cells, and cackling mad laughs drift down the corridors. You can, again, go and stay over in this particular place, though, again, they say you've got to be fairly careful about it. One of the things which I find to be quite interesting is that there's a lot of stonework in the jail cells, rather than movable metal beds and things. They have built up stone so that things can't be moved or shifted by the prisoners, which adds a certain amount of gleeful horror to the place. Um, and the mad prisoners that died there are still inside. Um, I've got a quick question here, again from Moketsi, about what about the ghosts and evil spirits in Africa? Well, we've done South Africa, and that certainly had a few. And I'm thinking after Wales, we are going to come back to Africa, and we are going to pick a country in Africa to have a look at what ghosts and cryptids, because of course cryptids as well play a part in the supernatural. Um, so we're definitely going to be coming back to Africa and doing more. So don't worry about that. As the lives go on, feel free to join in. There will be more. I try to join in every time at around 10 or so in the evening for South Africa style. Hey Jeremy, hey Ayla. Um, so we are going around the world. We are looking for commonalities, both with ghosts and with cryptids. So we've only done one country in Africa so far, so you can be sure that there will be a great deal more that we absolutely have to cover around Africa. But to keep things fresh, we're bouncing around the world a little bit. Um, another place in Wales that we can look at, and here again, very interesting in Llandaff in Cardiff, is the Insel Court. It's a mansion in Cardiff, and the Insel family were coal merchants and industrialists at the time, and it is said at the time uh, they were among the richest people around. It's a Victorian mansion, and apparently several of the family members remain there and can absolutely be seen even around and heard wandering the halls. As we know, um, in the early days of coal mining, it was quite hard, which is quite difficult because they didn't understand about medicine and diseases and such. Hey, Rice. Um, and of course, what that meant is people often got quite serious lung diseases and therefore died as a result of it, um, which basically means that uh, life was short and absolutely difficult. So, plenty of opportunity for tragedy. Now, they don't mention, at least, that there was any violent or um, evil deaths, as it were, to cause a ghost, but there was certainly a number of tragic deaths, which is the other main cause, it seems, of a ghost. Now, we're going to touch on a new place in Tenby in Pembrokeshire, where you have a mix, because this is where the cryptids touch in, because you absolutely have a whole lot of ghosts all around the area in the castles. It seems that when it comes to ghosts in Wales, it's definitely the castles where you're going to find them. And in fact, um, in places like Conwy Castle, they've actually recorded voices speaking around the area, and there are a lot of tragic tales. And as you move around the different buildings in the area, um, not only are there odd ghosts and people saying that their names are called by something in the dark when there should be nobody there. We touch on the first of something which is quite interesting for um, the British Isles, that you have the fairy. Now, of course, who are the fairy and what are they all about? Um, well, the smallest house in Britain is found in Pembrokeshire, and it is 72 inches across and 122 inches high. Way too small for a human, but it's said to be the home of um, some of the fair folk. And people say that sometimes you see shadows moving around the house and strange smells coming out of it. So who knows? Um, Another place in Pembrokeshire that you can visit that goes around on some of the tours you can do for looking for ghosts is Carew Castle, of course. And this one is full. There are men, women, and children. And very strangely, for ghosts, because animals do not often feature as ghosts. Hey, Tosh. Um, welcome, welcome, welcome. There's a Barbary ape that apparently haunts the halls. There's also a Celtic warrior, a kitchen boy who runs around the kitchens and knocks the pans and pots around, another one of the white ladies, which are quite common ghosts, it seems, all around the world, um, and who interestingly not only appears at night, especially on full moons, but even in daylight, and who is charmingly called Princess Nest for some reason. Um, but interesting collection of ghosts, and I've got to say that the the, the idea of an animal ghost in there is a fascinating one. It's not often that you will get animal ghosts, not without a human conjunction at the very least. So, a fascinating idea. Hey there, how are you doing, Waketsi?
Oh, good evening. How are you?
Good, good, good. Welcome, welcome. So, what do you think? Are
Can you also
ghosts?
please add my friend?
Yes, absolutely. There we go. Accepted. So, what do you think? Are ghosts real?
Yes, they are.
I would say that's a pretty standard belief, not only in our countries, but in many countries. So, and there's plenty of evidence to support it, it seems, as well. Now, one thing I do want to ask you, which I think is very important, Shem, it looks like Tosh is having a hard time connecting. I hope he can manage. Um, but he's trying. Have you ever seen, or do you think exist, the shadow people?
I'm not sure about shadow people, but like I've experienced like feeling kind of like cold when I passed a graveyard or something. Then I saw something, then it disappeared.
Now, that's another thing which I find fascinating because people associate cold spots with ghosts, and I've never really encountered a good reason why they would cause cold. So that's something we're going to have to explore as we go through with the channel and see if we can find answers. I don't know, do you have an opinion?
No, I don't have an opinion.
That's a
Just a,
hard one. I
yeah,
think
just a somehow experience. Like your hair feels tingly when like something passes, like something that like it's unknown or something. Like that's how I felt. My hair was like
I,
something like electricity like was passing through me. Like
that's
so, like I don't
interesting
understand.
because
Yeah.
now that you say it, I could say that I felt something very similar in a number of the ghost encounters I've had. So absolutely, yes, I think that's a very good observation. I think most people, when they encounter a ghost, don't spend too much time thinking about it. To be fair, um, it's like what's that famous story, um, which is something of a joke, but still, it says a lot about ghost encounters. I think there's a guy walking through a graveyard, and as he comes around a corner, there's a person standing there, and he says, "My God, I had such a fright when I saw you. It was amazing. Um, but do you think this place is haunted?" And the guy says, "Well, I've been here 300 years and I've never seen a ghost." And that really sort of sums up our view, doesn't it? Tosh is having another go at joining. I hope it works. Come on. But yes, looking at the ghosts that we've got going around Wales, definitely around the castles. Hey, Tosh, you made it. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello, hello,
And what about you? How do you feel about ghosts? Real or imaginary?
hello.
Do you think ghosts are real?
You talking to me?
Mm,
Yeah, I hear you, but I know a lot. I know a lot about the history we've been talking about. Whatever you're talking about, the ghosts, Illuminati, or the systems that run the world. Whatever you can say, astrology, numerology. Come on, yeah,
okay.
you're talking to the master. Come on, we can talk.
Well, ghosts is our topic at the moment. And what about you? Shadow people, have you seen them?
Feeling about
Well, going around the varying countries and looking at the ghost law and what have you, one of the things which comes up as a common theme are what they call shadow people, which they say are apparently at least humanoid, but composed of shadow, often with glowing red eyes. And they're seen quite often in multiple countries around the world with very different cultures, religions, backgrounds, but a similar story. So, what's your view on that, Tosh?
that one. I don't have much to say, but I have believe in you, whatever you're saying, and I believe that what I know about the people that I've heard that each and every single person on earth has or has or his own image or her own image. For example, if it's me as a church, né,
Okay,
I have my own. We call it. Let's call it a copy of like a demonic. Yeah, it's a demonic a twin. Yeah. So if I die today, for example, maybe in Switzerland or USA, there is someone who looks like me exactly. That one we call it a demonic a copy, which means if I die today, that person who looks like me, it's me in the other way around. So you will be continuing to live my life, but people wouldn't realize because whenever I was living by my time, they used to call us. The twin we like we looking at like but in one way of Illuminati we are the demonic twin. So I don't know wherever, but whatever you're saying I believe with you, but I'm together with you.
well, interestingly enough, I can tell you two things about that. The first is that what you're talking about is what they call a doppelganger, which of course is German for a double walker. Basically, they
Yeah.
mean someone who is your identical twin. and they say
Yeah.
everybody has one. Some people
Yes.
say that the twin is evil, some say that they are not. But strangely enough, I've met mine, and he was a very nice guy, but he looked so identical to me that our own families couldn't tell us apart, um, which was very,
But
very interesting.
look, let's okay. Let me just come up with something else because like it seems like you know too much. Okay, it's fine. We can switch on. But do you really know that? I mean, like the world is being run by the white people, but the black people are the first people to dominate the earth. And but the history has been created by the white man. For example, you know exactly what's going on in Africa, you white people, and you created us history. You created us apartheid. You created us everything you know
Yeah.
about us. So no, no, let me just go on. I will give you the time. I was just saying that most of the people they don't even realize or they don't know, even the Chinese, that the white person on earth is the most clever person who knows everything more than everyone. So I'm not surprised if you know a lot of things more than black people. But if you tell a black person about whatever you're saying, they will take a time to believe. Because look, you even created a situation where where we have to go to school and thinking that school after school getting degrees, you'll be a doctor, you'll be earning a lot of money, which is a lie. So education, job, and the church is just a scam or nothing else for us black people, or we are living in a darkness moment created by the white person.
That I don't know. There we're going into a whole idea of the politics and stuff, and really the aim of this live is to touch on ghosts. So I don't want to stray
Okay,
too far from all of that. Um,
okay,
I think that would be an entire topic that would require a lot more knowledge and a lot more understanding than I could give it. But
okay. But I was thinking maybe, I was just thinking maybe you want us to go on everything because I like the debating. I don't know if you understand me. But if you're talking about the ghosts, yeah, yeah, I believe in that thing you're talking about the ghost because I'm always saving that history in my phone from TikTok about the ghost red eyes, everything. Yes, that one is true.
well, I would tend to say that ghosts do seem to be uh, a belief in just about every culture, absolutely. And as I say, we are running through different countries around the world and looking at what the ghost stories are, maybe to find a better understanding of what ghosts might be. Um, so let's have a look at a couple more, and you can give your opinions on them. As I say, today's place that we're looking at is actually Wales, which is part of the British Isles. Um, and one of the things that comes up in a number of the different places is that the time of the year matters, and that at certain
Yeah.
times of the year, the boundary between the living and the dead becomes thinner, allowing for more supernatural activities. Now, we obviously have in the Western world Halloween, which is the modern version of All Hallows Eve, which is an old Christian celebration, which may very well have been based on pre Christian celebrations. Um, do you think around Africa there are specific days that uh, ghosts and things are likely to appear?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, that would
Let me tell you
seem,
something.
yes.
Actually, you see, when you come to Africa, you see Africa, bro. Africa, I think, is the most, or let me just say, whatever you're talking about is a copy from Africa. Africa is the first country about whatever you're talking about the ghost or whatever I was saying, and you said I was out of topic, whatever. When it comes to Africa, yeah, we have experienced that thing, and we're still experiencing too much more. Africa is the motherland of witchcraft. Actually, I have to tell you this. If
Okay.
you're talking about the witchcraft and the ghost, whatever you're saying, come to Africa. Yes, I know. I have experienced that thing.
Well, certainly there is a strong tradition in Africa. I think you will find that there's also a strong tradition in many other countries, but absolutely, when it comes to ghosts and things, I think that just about every country in the world will give you a lot of stories in terms of that. One of the things that we were bringing up earlier is the fact that in Wales, at least, if you want ghosts, you go to the castles, and Wales is known as the land of castles. They, over history, they were great builders of castles, and of course, castles meant wars and fighting, and therefore lots of reasons for dead people. So ghosts certainly are attracted, or at least come from the castles. There's no doubt about that. Um,
Yeah,
so over history, there's a lot of that. Now, in Wales, I would say that it's very hard to count how many castles or castle-like manor houses that they will have there. Um, so plenty that have gone from very, very early in the history of Great Britain and onwards. But there are a few other places which are actually quite nice places normally, but nevertheless are haunted. And one of those is actually the Skirrid Mountain Inn in Llanfihangel, which is kind of like a public house, a hotel sort of a place. And back in very, very early days, sorry, just going to accept Mary. Welcome, welcome. Yes, do join us, please. Back in the early days, uh, there was a fellow there by the name of John Crowther who was sentenced to death for sheep stealing, and he was hanged from a beam of the inn. Now, of course, um, we have established that if you want ghosts, the two main ways to get ghosts is either through a violent end or a tragic end. So absolutely a violent end if he was hung. And over the next 800 years, over 180 felons or criminals were hung over the building's stairwell. So apparently, this pub back in the day was used for executions, and nowadays it's a public house that you can go there and visit. Um, it's no longer used as a courthouse, but of course, with all of the criminals that were executed there, uh, absolutely a fertile ground for ghosts. Yes, ask a question. Go for it.
Uh, about the ghosts in the UK and let's say the world, nah?
Yes.
Is it possible for ghosts to kill you?
Now, that's a very, very interesting question because now I can give you a couple of different viewpoints on that. Now, the first viewpoint is that ghosts can't, but there are other things that can. The second viewpoint is it depends on the kind of ghost. Um, Now, the third viewpoint is that if though the ghost can't physically do anything, if they can scare you enough, you might die of fright. So you've got a number of different views going around. Now, of course, this is why it became so important to try to establish exactly what a ghost is, because now you get the ghosts that are, shall we say, okay, let's say you die, and for some reason your spirit cannot move on. You're neither alive nor dead, but you can be seen, maybe heard. But that's all in the first view. That's all you are. You're like an echo that remains. Okay. But we know that there are a number of occasions, as within that one castle we spoke of a little earlier, where the little boy in the kitchen bangs the pots and pans, which means that that ghost, at the least, can affect things physically. So it implies that there must be some kinds of ghosts that can affect you physically. Now, if they can affect you physically, assumedly, I can therefore hit you or stab you, even though it's a ghost, which means a ghost could possibly harm you and even possibly kill you. There are people who say, no, no, but the ones that actually do that aren't ghosts, there's something else. Hard to tell, let's be fair. I mean, it's definitely a difficult point to answer. I suspect that it depends on the amount of energy a ghost has, which does seem directed, hey Hira, to how angry the ghost was when it died. So that's a brilliant question. Let's have a look, because now in this inn, in Llanfihangel, they were over 180 felons executed. Now, felons are criminals. We assume they are bad people and angry people. They were thieves and more. So certainly they would be angry. So let's see if they say um, there is any actual physical thing. Now, they say that if you go there, you can certainly use the public house, which is basically a bar where you can get food as well. And it's all very nice during the day. But at night, it seems the ghosts do come out. Now, lots of people say that, just as you did, there's an overwhelming sensation of someone being there, the feeling of something somewhat electric. However, there are a few who say they have had the feeling of a hangman's noose going around their neck and actually felt it tightening, and they've had to struggle to break free from the grip of the noose. And afterwards, they've had rope marks on their neck for several days. So that seems to imply that if a ghost is angry enough, they can absolutely affect you, which is quite scary. But hopefully, there aren't too many that are that angry. So it seems that to answer your question, yes, sometimes, but not usually. Now, of course, that means we need to discover how this changes and why, does it not? Now, there's an interesting story where a medium, now, for those of you who don't know, a medium is basically somebody who says they are psychic, that they can hear or speak to ghosts and such. And in the 1990s, this person went to this particular inn and said that he encountered a young woman who died of a disease called consumption, especially a breathing disease, uh, where your lungs fill up with phlegm and liquid and you choke to death eventually. It's not a good way to die at all. So obviously that's quite a nasty one. But then, you know, the guy said that and then he left. Several months later, however, a couple researching their family tree came to visit, and they said they were looking into one of their ancestors who had owned the premises during the 18th century. And they then revealed in their discussions that, sorry, I'm just going to quickly add in somebody who's asked to join. Give me a sec just to catch that. Where are you? There you are. And there you are. Okay, so we're just inviting a few more people on to join the chat. But they then revealed that the wife of their ancestor had in fact died in uh, the same pub of consumption. So absolutely true to what the medium said. And in fact, this lady was buried in the local churchyard. So apparently truth to that, which is very interesting. So maybe the medium was correct. Another one that we have in Miskin, in northern Cardiff, is Miskin Manor Hotel, another hotel which is interesting. And there is a lovely hotel there that you can go and visit and stay in. It has a wonderful history that goes back to the 10th century, so a very long time, over 1,000 years, which is lovely. Doesn't time move on? And the house in its current state was redone and built up in 1857 by a well-known, famous Welsh bard and philanthropist, David Williams. It survived two major fires in its history, one in 1922 and a similarly bad one in 1952. And that was shortly after it spent a bit of time during the war, Second World War, as a hospital base, which often was the case for many public buildings during the war because of the need, obviously. And despite the fact it's a lovely place today to visit, because of its history, there are quite a lot of ghosts. Now, the most active ghost is that of a lady who appears regularly in the bar area. Now, she's said to be quite harmless, so perhaps Moketsi, this is one of the nicer ones. Now, now, Moketsi, you've made another point. Give me a second because I'm coming back to that. And it's one which I want to touch on in terms of haunted places. So hold on to that question because you are quite right. We'll bring it up now, guys. Now, this ghost, as I say, is harmless. And she turns up and walks around and doesn't really do anything. And the hotel porter who works there has got so used to her appearances that he'll sit there and just have a cup of tea and greet her and carry on. So apparently that one is a former resident of the house, and she's just following her regular path that she once used to do, going around the house in life. There used to be a staircase where she disappears into the wall, so she was evidently just going up or down from the staircase to the other room. So that one is a nice one. Now, apparently they brought in a team of researchers in 2004 to try and see her, but they couldn't find anything, and once they had left, she turned up and wandered past, which they were probably very upset about. However, what can you do? However, now we need to answer the question which Mokwetsi brought up, and this is an important one, which I think is one that needs to be touched on. He says, I was told to stay away from supernatural places because I might bring back a curse. Now, I wonder about that because when it comes to only ghosts, it seems that for most of the time you're kind of okay. However, many haunted places have more than ghosts, and one of which we touched on when we did South Africa was, of course, Kempton Hospital, which I've been to several times. And I can tell you that when I was there, I did take a number of precautions to make sure that I didn't bring anything back. But I have a good friend who went there and didn't. And they actually did bring something back, which caused a lot of difficulty, terrible nightmares, scratches on her body, and eventually she was taken and given what we can basically call a exorcism to cleanse her from whatever it was that had hooked onto her. So they did that, and it almost immediately she stopped getting nightmares. There were no more scratches on her body. She was fine. So it seems that, yes, absolutely, you can bring something back and it can be bad. What that is, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, in answer to your question, Muketsi, yes, you can. It's very good advice. Um, I think if the ghosts are harmless, you're probably okay, but the only way you're going to find out is by going. So maybe not good advice at all, hey? Um, for an easy life, don't go. What do you say?
The problem is like we don't know like where people are buried. Someone can build a house where like there's a graveyard underground or a hospital or a castle.
Now, you see, there is a very, very important point, and this is true especially with older places and with things like battlefields. Now, in my experience, and if you disagree with me, fine, because there are instances where it seems that this is not necessarily the case. But for the most part, and I'm specifically talking modern graveyards, because if you go to very, very old graveyards, the problem is when medicine was not good, people could get buried before they were really dead. But in modern graveyards, people don't die in graveyards. So I've always found graveyards, at least modern ones, to be very nice, quiet. But places where there's been, for example, a battlefield, hospitals, places where people die, I've definitely found it to be far more haunted and chilling. And where you've got a place like in this last public house where they executed felons back in the day, um, yeah, that's where they died. So absolutely, that would be a problem. Um, Also, as you have pointed out, and I think it's true, uh, especially in big countries. Hey there, welcome, welcome. Um, uh, Not too sure what happened there, but anyway. In big countries where land use is not so strictly controlled, you often will find people had private cemeteries for their family back in the day. Places like Britain, because it's a very small country, you would have strict areas where people would be buried, usually near the church. So you knew where people were buried. Whereas in somewhere like Africa, where you've got big tracts of land and often not a lot of close churches or anything like that, you would have a family graveyard near where you lived. And if something happened that the family moved away, then that graveyard might be forgotten or lost. And then if people come couple of 100 years later and move into the area, as you say, you would have no idea that in fact there were people buried there. I mean, there might not even be physical remains to know. So that could very much be a problem. Um, so yeah, where people die is the places that I think are the most haunted, but not exclusively. And as we saw with the South American traditions, where they have a strong uh, appreciation for the dead, and this is something which is echoed in Africa in many places, where there's a strong appreciation with the ancestors and the dead. Um, People often would like to bring their family back. But if that family then moves away or something happens that they're gone, would it mean then that the ancestors are still there and might now become angry that their family's not around? It's a very serious question that might cause an upset ghost. So I think that absolutely is a very important point that does need to be raised in terms of the supernatural.
There I think you're right, cause like I'm from South Africa.
Yes, me too.
Uh, yeah, a lot of people like praise ancestors. They talk to them,
Yes. Ah,
and then like there are some people that ask for money from their ancestors, and then they get them, but there are terms and conditions to
now
use that money or leave.
that is another very important point because as we've gone around the world, um, I know a lot of the major religions, especially, forbid you from making deals with anything supernatural. Um, we know that in the Christian Bible it says, "You shall have no other God but me." In the Quran, again, "You shall have no other God but me." In the Jewish texts as well, in the Older Testaments, it says, "You shall have no other God but me," which certainly seems to imply that there are dangers in making deals with the supernatural. Now, I would hope, at least if it is your own ancestors, it might be safer, maybe. But absolutely, I agree. There are terms and conditions which we do need to consider. It's not just a free lunch, as it were. Let's just jump now to Llancaich, which is a manor on a place called Nelson Treharris. Now, this is another historic manor house, and again, as with many of the Welsh names, they're very, very difficult to pronounce if you don't speak Welsh Gaelic. So I've probably ruined the name, but there we go. Um, it's again one of the older, still in use places. They say that it's as if you are transported back to 1645. Um, and of course, it's very strongly connected to the politics of the day, which was quite important. Um, at the time, you were either a parliamentarian or a royalist. And it was a very serious argument at the time that led to a lot of battles and death. And if the wrong side caught you, as it were, you could very easily be executed for following the traitors, whichever your view was the traitors were. Now, the original owner, Colonel Edward Pritchard, switched his allegiance from the royalists to the parliamentarians. Um, and that, of course, caused a lot of difficulty. Um, what really happens there, however, goes back into a history of fights and arguments and violence. And while you can visit during the day, and it's all done up in period costume and it's very nice and all the rest of it, when it gets dark, especially around the times of winter, ghosts wander the hall. And it's said that it is possibly one of the spookiest places you can go to. There's quite famous paranormal investigator Phil Wyman, who said that it was the freakiest place he had ever been, and when the lights go out, it gets pitch black and there's an overwhelming sense of desolation. Now, this, of course, again touches on what you were saying, Muketsi, that you got that cold and terrible feeling passing the graveyard. Absolutely, this seems to echo exactly what you said. Now, in this particular place, at the grand staircase, there are two spectral children that sometimes appear, but usually are heard rather than seen. And they're apparently enjoying some kind of a game where they're running around and you can hear them playing and laughing. Um, there are also several other children uh, around other parts of the house. And this again touches on what you were saying, that absolutely they can affect the physical because they play tricks on staff and visitors alike, um, often untying the staff's aprons or having bows. If you have a bow in your hair or something, they'll pull them apart. But generally just pranks, not anything dangerous. So it seems that it's mostly children, which in some ways is even creepier, let's face it. Definitely not. I think if was to encounter a ghost, I think of all of them, the creepiest would be a child because that's the saddest. I don't know if you agree with me there. But again, we have another lady in white. Ladies in white seem to turn up again in multiple different cultures, regardless of the country or religion. So, absolutely, that's a common ghost theme, um, which we can definitely say is quite important. Usually, the ladies in white are not dangerous, creepy as they are. Um, she had a bedroom on the upper floor, and she is noted of being in the room and near it. And when she's around, there is the feeling of crushing sadness that you get. And in fact, um, some of the toughest Australian rugby players were housed there when they were in Wales for a game, and they were so overcome by fear and emotion that they had to leave the manor in tears. So, apparently, emotions can be affected by ghosts very much as well. And it definitely fits with what we've seen with other countries, no doubt at all. So, everything that you've said, Mokwetsi, is bearing up in the stories from Wales. Now, I want to jump away from ghosts just a little bit and move on to the other cryptids briefly, because after all, um, there's a lot of things that need looking at least, um, to see if there are similarities in other cultures and other places. And the very first one, absolutely, we have a version of in Africa, and we saw a version of in Mexico, and there is a version of in Portugal. So that's called an afank, which is kind of a large, possibly demonic crocodile, which can cause floods and drown people. Some say it's not so much a crocodile, but more like a beaver or halfway between the two. Hard to say, different stories about it, but that seems to be their version of the reptile creature that we see in a great many different places. Of course, um, we had the large crocodile snake thing in Portugal. We had the giant snakes in Mexico, and in South Africa, of course, we have the rainbow snake, one of which is in Howick. So, absolutely, that's common. Now, the next interesting one. Um, oh, yes, just before we jump across, the problem with children is that their tricks can cause you to have an accident, like fall in a well and die, so that you can play with them. Absolutely, that is something which does come up in a number of the um, stories of ghosts, and we will certainly touch on that when we encounter them in other places. But just quickly to move on, the Kona Noon. Now, in the Welsh mythology, you have the Welsh fairy, and what a fairy is varies greatly. They are not like in modern Disney, where there are little flower creatures with sparkly wings. The Gaelic fairy in all the Gaelic areas are very different and are possibly halfway. Hey, Lucidi, halfway between a monster and some kind of demon in a way. They are part of what is roughly the elvish creatures, shall we say. Now, Cunanun, well, to to go with the second part first, Anun is the god of the dead. So, as you can imagine, all things related to Anun is not a good thing. Absolutely not. Kun literally just means dog. Ku is the Gaelic word for a dog. So the Kunanun are the hounds of Anun. Um, they are kind of ghost dogs. And this is interesting in that they're sort of ghosts, but sort of more fairy, so more demonic. And they are associated with the Welsh wild hunt and the Lord Arun, who is said to be this spectral hunter that goes out on certain nights and hunts down people for varying reasons, sometimes because they've been bad and deserve it, and sometimes just because you were out when you shouldn't have been. So, absolutely, they are known to be pure white dogs with red ears, which is quite interesting. And dogs turn up in cryptid mythology around the world quite a lot, which is interesting. And moving from there, of course, we have another one, which is the Gwiligi, which is a black dog, which is a spectral hound you often find in quite a lot of different of the European cultures, at least. Um, Either a mastiff or sometimes a black wolf with red eyes. But what's very interesting about it is this is a description that sort of fits, if you will, much like the shadow creatures, which are said to be able to change shape when they want to, but are always black and shadowy with burning red eyes. Hey, Mohammed. Hey, Gal. So, absolutely, this fits to similar themes we've found in a number of different countries, which is great. Moving on from there, we have um, Tris, which is a giant boar, sometimes with several smaller ones with it, that wreaks havoc through the landscape, destroying farms and causing chaos and destruction. Uh, Quite a fun one there. I haven't encountered a boar yet in the countries we've covered. But now, as we go on, there's another one that is very interesting because it's echoed in a lot of other cultures, as we'll see around the world. And these are the Koblino, which are a kind of gnome or sprite, which are miners that live in mines and often can be very helpful, guiding miners to rich seams if you're good to them. But if you're bad to them, they can lead you to your death. So, absolutely fitting the idea of the mining creatures. Now, we know, as an echo of that just briefly, in the Nordic traditions, the Svartalfar are considered to be something much like this. And when we get to do the Nordic, we will definitely touch on those Alfar. Alfar are the Nordic elves, in case you're wondering. The next one is a big favorite of mine, um, known as a palug cat, or the Kaspalu, which it's basically a giant cat. Now, we've encountered in Portugal a giant cat. We know in Africa there are many stories of giant cats. So, cats are common in many cultures around the world. And this one is absolutely in the same line as we've encountered in all the other places, a large and vicious cat known for attacking warriors, especially those who are attacking whales. So there we go. And of course, we cannot leave the cryptids of Wales without at least touching on the famous Gedregoch, or the red dragon, which is the symbol of Wales, which is said to lie under Wales. And as we know from the Arthurian legends, when there was something of an attempt to make Great Britain one by Arthur Pendragon, there was the mythical battle between the red and white dragon, the red dragon being the red dragon of Wales, and the white dragon, I'm thinking, and I could be wrong because I misremember, that of Cornwall. But absolutely very an important creature for Wales. But that's by no means the last of. There are a number of sea serpents and a kind of hairy man, which echoes the concept of Bigfoot or Yeti. So we do have that in Wales, which we didn't have, interestingly enough, in Portugal, and which we don't really have much of in Africa that I can think of the top of my head. We will find out more as we go around Africa, of course, but it seems that hairy men are particular to certain areas. So there's that. But we do need to briefly talk about the fairy. Now, as we know, in Saudi Arabia, you have the jinn, and we touched on those quite a bit in the looking at the cryptids of Saudi Arabia, and they are echoed in the British Isles by the fairy, which of course also have analogues in a number of other places. But the Welsh fairy are quite dark, and if you ever want to learn more, do go and read the Mabinogion. It is a very difficult read, I will not lie to you, and pronunciation is terrifying. But they speak of the fair folk, and just like the Saudi Arabian jinn, they are a kind of a creature that is half physical and half not, that have the ability to move back and forth between quite a lot of different places very, very quickly. They have magic and powers that are beyond that of anything people have, and they are known to, at many occasions, be quite tricksy and sometimes get annoyed with people upsetting uh, upsetting their victims and even killing them. We know that the famous banshee, which in modern English we call a banshee, not only is said to be seen on the warning of an imminent death, crying and wailing, um, and they, of course, come from the Welsh fairy court, the dark court of the fairy, um, which again is echoed in quite a few other cultures, that there are two courts to the fairy, the light and the dark, the good and the bad. But which is which? And that is not so obvious. Um, the dark court might be the good ones, just far uglier and far more frightening. And to quote one of my favorite quotes from The Lord of the Rings, uh, it would be thought that if you were evil, you would look fairer but feel fouler. Whereas, of course, as was responded to that comment, so what you're saying then is that I look foul but feel fair. Um, hard to say, I think. Hard to say. But certainly it does add to the interesting possibilities that may or may not be out there. But yes, the Welsh fairy is something we can only very, very briefly touch on, because there are whole books written on the subject, so absolutely difficult to say. But we have a number of ghostly traditions and things which are, at the very least, similar to what come up in other ways. We have our shadow dogs, and there are certain times when forms of the wild hunt appear as shadowy figures, sometimes on horseback, sometimes not, that can absolutely shape change and have burning red eyes in a number of the stories. And there again, we have a commonality from the shadow folk found in South Africa, the shadow folk found in South America, and the shadow found in Saudi Arabia and in Portugal. So, are we running a theme here? It seems that we might be. It seems that, if nothing else, while we have a number of different um, explanations for them, we absolutely, nevertheless, all seem to have some kind of experience of them, which is possibly quite terrifying. Do we share our world with more than we think? It seems yes. So we have ghosts that fit the normal, traditional, properly ghost roles, absolutely. We have ghosts, again, that seem to be able to actually do things, usually the violent ones, which perhaps is the telling point there. Um, so, yes, we need to keep that in mind. It seems that if it's just somebody that happened to have died, you're probably okay. But if it's somebody who died violently, you had better be very, very careful, because they may have more physical abilities than other ghosts. We have the shadow creatures, which seem to be able to do more. Uh, I have a comment here from Rabbit. I'm afraid I don't quite understand what you are asking there. Why Daman our Bolela Kadi Ghost? Sorry, I'm only English speaking, so that's the best I can do for that. If you can rephrase your question, I'll be glad to answer. But yes, without a doubt, there is a lot of strange things out there in the almost ghost, but possibly living creatures, just not quite the same as humans. And as we know, with the shadow creatures of Saudi Arabia, the jinn, they're actually spoken of in the Quran, and there are rules and laws about them. So they're considered to be a perfectly normal part of the world. So absolutely, absolutely. And then, of course, you get the legendary cryptids, many of which are there to teach you to be a better person, to be respectful, and if you're not, something dark and nasty from the fairy realms might well come and sort you out. Of course, with the modern age and the rise of Christianity in Wales, there is a great deal that is explained as demonic or evil, and there are plenty of explanations that it's obviously just a demon, and therefore you should avoid it very, very much. Um, so, absolutely, and if we look at all of the stories, again, exactly the same as um, in all the other cultures, religious items can hold off evil and possibly even ghosts. Prayer is supposed to work and, in fact, be very necessary if things go bad. And again, something which came up in other cultures and countries, cold iron is supposed to be particularly effective um, against these creatures. Now, another comment that's popped up there, Moketsi, yes, in South Africa, people use demons and the dead to cure people. Well, this is where we run into a certain amount of question about what we're talking about. And it links in, I think, to your comment that there's always a payment. Now, as we know in South Africa, the understanding of the ancestors is a very common belief, and the ancestors are considered to be good. And certainly, um, to go via the ancestors is an absolutely legitimate way to get healed, especially from any curses, but even from physical ailments. And we need to also, before we just say to use the dead to cure, we need to keep in mind that in the understanding of the ancestors, they're not really dead per se in the way that most Westerners would view the dead, that they're dead and gone somewhere else. The ancestors, I suppose you would say they are living an alternative style of life in that they've moved off the physical plane, but they're still around. So um, it's not purely the use of random dead, but absolutely to go to your ancestors to gain cures. And that's considered a good thing. However, as you have pointed out, is also the idea of using demons to get a cure. And therein you get issues because every culture that I've seen, and Wales is true of it as well, if you try to get cures for things from an outside source, be it the fairy or demons or whatever these creatures are, there is a price to pay. And very often the price is a great deal more than you thought it was when you made the deal. But the act of making the deal binds you to it. So it can absolutely become a serious problem. And I think that would be very good advice all round that. Cheers, by the way. If you are going to go to the ancestors for a cure, you're probably all right in that they are your ancestors and therefore more likely um, to have goodwill towards you. They might want you to be a better person or do certain things to honor their memories, etc., which is fine. But if you're going to go to a darker side to get your cure, I would strongly advise against it, as the price you will pay is likely to be excessive. Now, there are a number of stories, even as far back as in the Mabinogion itself, in Welsh mythology, where people have gone to the fairy for all sorts of things, from cures to wealth and more. And it looked like they were getting a great deal in the beginning. And as time went on, they found that the deal that they had made was not as good as they thought. And generally, it brought them to ruin in a great many ways. So certainly that echoes the warnings in many of the other countries that we've touched on and cultures that we've touched on, that says that if it ain't yours, don't touch it. Good advice, I think, all round. So yes, we have the idea of the ghosts, and we've got um, all of these semi-supernatural or fully supernatural creatures as well. Mokwetsi has pointed out that not all ancestors are necessarily really an ancestor, but could be an evil spirit or demon. This is also true. And relating it across to the Welsh fairy, they're absolutely known to be tricksters, that the evil ones try to catch you out. And perhaps for that reason, when it comes to dealing with the ancestors, for the most part in South Africa, you are advised to go to somebody who is a properly trained nyanga or sangoma in order to get professional attraction to such things and help from such things, so that you do get a proper ancestor and not something pretending to be. Now, there are stories that I've found in Wales where people thought they saw one of their dead ancestors that asked them to do this or that to honor their memory, and it turned out that it was in fact some kind of demon or fairy creature pretending to be, that was attempting to lead them to ruin. There are also cases, especially in some of the moorlands, where you get quite bad swamps, where somebody would appear who, as far as they know, is a living person that they know well, that tries to lead them deeper into the swamp, where they would get caught in the mud and drown. Um, but they managed to escape, realizing the danger, and when they got home, found that the person they thought it was absolutely never there at all. Um, but in fact, it was something else pretending. So yes, it appears that our fairies, which can sometimes be good, can also very much sometimes be bad, just like the jinn and just like the shadow people. So we've got some very common themes in some very disparate cultures. Absolutely. And I think that we now need to close off on Wales. And I think in our next live, we need to take up the same thing in one of the other African countries, because we need our contrast for every live. So I'm going to find a suitable um, country around Africa where we can find more cryptids and ghosts, and see if we can't discover um, if we have the same themes coming up again, and learn more about what really might be out there. So thank you very much for having joined me. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And Muketsi, it was fantastic having you alongside. And thank you so much for all of your comments and questions. It was definitely a interesting research, and the fact that so many of both the cryptids and the ghosts have exactly the same traits as in completely different cultures and countries, maybe that tells you something either about us as people or about what really is out in the dark. So join me tomorrow and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Good night and good luck.